Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Yeah, many thanks for Mobidictum for hosting this event. Many thanks to George, Paul-David, Paulo to join this panel, and hello to everyone who's watching us online. Today we will talk about Web3 games. What can the mobile games industry learn? There is a lot of buzz going around Web3 lately, and I hope that in the next 30 minutes we can have a fun and engaging chat with the experts and deliver a lot of useful information on Web3 to the audience. And the last bit before we start, we want to keep this panel as an open forum. For those who are watching us online, please make sure you send your questions via Pine, and our experts panel would love to answer those. And let's start from the introductions. Paul-David, please tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Nat. Hi, everybody. My name is Paul-David Oosthuizen. I'm the co-founder of a game studio called Made for Gamers. And we build Web3 enabled games, as well as we'll soon be releasing a Web3 gaming platform.
George, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I run operations at Footium, which is a Web3 football management game where you can be the owner, manager, and scout for your own football club.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. I'm Paul, working at Admix, and I'm leading the Web3 partnership side of the business, trying to discuss and activate partnership with play-to-earn games and virtual worlds.
And I'm Natalia. I work with Paul at Admix, and I'll be moderating this panel today. So as a starting point, let's share our thoughts on Web3 games when we compare them to mobile and free-to-play games. Who would like to start the comparison?
I'll jump in if you want. Okay, so I came into Web3 gaming from a, let's call it more a conventional gamer angle. And I'd been playing a lot of mobile games in the past. And I think the one thing that became quite apparent to me early on was the difference between conventional mobile gaming, free-to-play gaming is the economy is focused on revenue when it comes to conventional gaming, versus when it comes to Web3 gaming, it's about rewarding players. So you think about how you structure your business model within the game very differently when it comes to building a Web3 game. It's about creating value for your community. Obviously, creating a fun game is already creating value. So I'm not taking that away from mobile gaming at all. But I think just from what you're actually trying to achieve in Web3 gaming is to actually reward players instead of necessarily trying to see what's the maximum amount of revenue that you can generate from them. That's my high level.
Yeah, I agree. I would say the starting point of any Web3 games, play-to-earn games, everything is starting from the community, right? If you have a look at a classic Web2 mobile game, they started to build a game, they release the game, and then they try to acquire users across different mechanisms, right? On the Web3 side, it's completely different because you need people to start. You need to create your community first, and from this community, you will try to sell different aspects, different NFTs, different utilities across your game, because it's people own the game, right? They need to be part of it. They need to make it happen, and they need to allow this game to grow and to evaluate.
Definitely. And just to add on to what Paul-David was saying, I think that Web3 games oftentimes get away with a lot of being kind of not perfect in terms of from a gamer's point of view, because those gamers do either have some kind of vested interests because they own some of the assets in the game, or because there's also that, not just the fun aspect, but also the potential sort of earning aspect. So I think that's where Web2 games actually do have a huge advantage in moving into the space, because these Web2 games, as soon as there's one barrier to entry, you lose loads of users. So if you've already got this fantastic, hopefully, user experience, and then you can integrate some aspect of sort of play to earn, then you're going to be miles ahead of a lot of the current Web3 games already.
So basically, that's how you can move mobile and free-to-play games to evolve into Web3.
Yeah, I guess, and you could even do a sort of Web 2.5 aspect where you just take some of the ad revenue that you're getting and put that into some kind of prize pool each week that people can compete to earn. And that's a very simple thing. It's not super Web3, but I think it will definitely drive more engagement with users. And I can't remember the name of the app, but that quiz app that was really popular in like 2019, 2020, that everyone was playing, and there was like $1,000 for grabs every day. But there'll be like 60,000 people competing. So there's like no chance you're going to win, but so many people enjoyed the game itself. And then there was just that small aspect of, I could also win some money here. And realistically, like $1,000 for 60,000 people being sort of live in the game, if they just chuck some ads in there, you can definitely make a margin on that.
I remember I played Trivia.
That's the one. Yes.
Never won a penny, but it was fun. Moving to slightly to the learnings part. So with Web3 games, we have new learnings, and we use a lot of new terms. What terms shall we know? Community, token, blockchain, NFT assets, etc. So I'll start with George, for example. So you decided to build a blockchain game, an NFT football club. What is the core? What is your community, and what is the core value of your community?
Sure. So our community is quite distributed across the kind of being pure Web3 NFT people to people that have played similar football management games in a kind of Web2 sense and see the appeal of actually being able to own your own asset and play against other people rather than just against sort of the computer and AI in that kind of competitive aspect. So we do have quite a range, and that's one of our goals, is bringing a lot more people into the Web3 space through our game, because I think not many people are entering the space through the likes of DeFi just because it is super complex, but gaming is something that is very common all around the world. Everyone loves to game. So it's definitely a way that we can kind of bring a lot more people in, but obviously having good user experiences and easy onboarding is a huge part of that. And I think one company that's done that quite well is Hosseraye, which is similar to kind of football fantasy game. And they have sort of fiat on-ramp, so you can just kind of deposit with your credit card, and you don't actually have to set up your own crypto wallet. You can do it on their platform, which isn't the most like Web3 way of doing things, but I think it's a good in-between, because people at the end of the day are still kind of utilizing those player NFTs, earning revenue from your players performing well in real life. And I think that's kind of definitely one of the main things that Web3 games need to have in mind, is that usability, because not everyone's going to set up a MetaMask and go on OpenSea and sign transactions just to kind of own one of your in-game assets. That's quite a big step. So having a broader view as to how these games can go from sort of a few thousand players to a few million players is definitely something that should be on the radar. But I think, again, that's where Web2 games have a real good opportunity to move into the space, because a lot of them will already have these huge user bases. And only if only 10% of those come into your kind of Web3 version of your game, that's still going to be a huge player base in comparison to most other Web3 games.
Is there any difference between community and the users comparing Web3 and Web2? Anyone can...
I mean, on my side, it's purely, it's a bit different. I mean, users on the Web2 side are consumers. They want to play the game. And most of the time, if they doesn't like it, they leave it, right? On the Web3 side, because they own a part of the game and they be part of, the building side of the game. They are engaged through Discord to communicate directly with the gaming team to just propose ideas or requests, etc. It's a bit different. We have here a stronger engagement. It's not through classic Google review, right? Where they're complaining about a bug. They do it directly on Discord, directly through potentially the right channel if it's a technical issue, or through I don't know marketing ideas or gameplay ideas. So they can directly be involved, and even more, they own one part of the game. So that's the relation is completely different, completely.
Paul-David, what has been your journey so far? Are you working on the community side or on the game economy in your game?
We spent a lot of time making sure that the game economy worked. And I say that because we approached it, what George was kind of mentioning before, like the Web 2.5 angle. We wanted to make a game that was going to be appealing to people that didn't want anything to do with the NFTs or tokens. So it took us a while to kind of figure out how do we do this in a way that it's not going to put people off that are from a conventional gaming background, that, you know, we'd love to onboard them onto the Web3 side over time, but we still just want them to play our game because it's going to be a fun game to play. So we spent a lot of time on that, and that actually prompted some of the other things, as it kind of alluded to, like the Web3 gaming platform and so forth, because of those plans that we were making and discussions that we were having with other game studios. But I think the community building aspect is probably the most important part for any, if you're a pure Web3 game being built, because that's it's such an incredible value base that you get from that community. The suggestions are great, but also just the ability to test ideas. You're not necessarily paying for that customer validation. You can, obviously, because you can gamify the experience in Discord. You can give people rewards for the way that they interact with you. But I'd say if you're a Web3 gaming company, right now, in any case, the community is more important than getting your game economy right first and foremost, because that's probably going to evolve over time. You know, like any type of startup potentially pivots, your game economy might change as you see what actually works and what doesn't work. But you want that community involvement early on. As I say, we initially came from we're going to build a 4X grand strategy game, and then we kind of pivoted into Web3 gaming later on. So we were doing it the old way initially.
Whatever works best, right? And touching the economy further, what's the tokenomics? What is a token to those who are new to Web3? What's the main point to release a token in Web3 game?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think we've tried to go a slightly different approach, but I'll touch on that in a moment. So I assume that most people here know what a token is, but ultimately, I suppose in most of the games, it's either going to be a means of e-commerce or a means of utility that gives you some type of reward or discount by being involved within that game or within that ecosystem. Tokens are basically the technological versions of discount vouchers or rewards vouchers within a utility sense. Why you would have a token in a game? Exactly for that. You can incentivize players to either give them discounts, or obviously with the whole play and earn movement, it's going to be something where they can get rewarded in tokens for playing your game, partaking in tournaments. In the type of game that we're building, you might get rewarded with tokens because you're gifting resources to your alliance or fellow players, because it just actually creates a better community within the game itself as well. So there's hundreds of use cases to what you can actually do with a token within a game from a rewards point of view. You just have to look at normal games in general. You're getting some games you log in and you get some type of item because you logged in that day, and then you complete a couple of quests and you get some rewards items. So changing that to a token that somebody could then potentially, if they want, sell on a market, even if it's a token then that's going to increase potentially in value, that's quite interesting and completely different, obviously, to the Web 2 environment.
Okay, let's touch a bit on the blockchain, how to choose the blockchain platform. So we hear there is Solana, Polygon, Ethereum. Where to start from? George,
you want to have a stab at that one first?
He's hiding.
Okay, well, look, I'm happy to jump in there if you want. We specifically chose Polygon initially, and one of the reasons was just because for us, all roads were leading to Polygon. We were talking with some accelerator programs. some of our technology partners, some of our other advisors, they'd signed agreements with Polygon. Polygon's obviously pushing heavily into gaming, virtual worlds, NFTs. But yes, they absolutely aren't the only, layer 1, layer 2 to play in the space. So there's a lot to choose from. And I think it comes down to a few things. What are you actually putting your game on chain, or are you simply putting your token on that particular chain? So we're doing a Matic-based token for our games. So if we were to do it directly on Ethereum, obviously you run into all the usual issues right now, such as gas fees and scalability and so forth. So it doesn't really make sense necessarily to do a gaming token directly on Ethereum. You'd rather do it on a layer 2. But yes, I think the good thing is there are lots to choose from right now. And I think we've tried to be led by where our Web3 community is. So a lot of the people that we're targeting ultimately from a community point of view are already on some type of ERC20 token from a preference point of view. Polygon obviously being one that's growing massively. But it could be a case where we introduce other other blockchains or protocols for some of the other use cases, such as NFTs, for example. So I think you're going to find that a lot of companies won't just be building on one. We're probably one that's going to be building on 2 from launch.
And it's also something that you can discuss and decide with your community, right? Based on the future expectation from the game, right? And the fact that it could evolve into other different things, right? If it's a DAO game and they want some sort of decentralized organization around the game, then the conversation and the choice of any blockchain is completely different.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of incentives as well, particularly across layer 1. So almost every kind of major layer 1 has a huge community grants fund, which oftentimes, like, games are one of the most exciting things in kind of blockchain at the moment. So there'll be a lot of grants available, potentially investment as well. I know Avalanche has like a $350 million fund for investing purely into gaming on Avalanche. So there's huge incentives for different chains as well. So I think if you can build a good relationship with kind of teams from those layer 1s, and if their community, which they often are, like a very sometimes some kind of layer 1s have very that chain focused communities, so they're like very hyped about purely Avalanche or purely Solana. So if you can tap into that kind of grants and investment, but also getting the marketing support, so pushing it out to that hyper engaged community of that chain, then that can give you almost an immediate community in some aspects.
George, Paul, would you say blockchain can be a good way to acquire users, right? When I say acquire, it's not the right term, right? Because it's not an acquisition, but it's more, would it be interesting to use, those blockchain communities to drive more users into your own community and to allow them to, of course, follow your project and make them happen at the next level?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a large aspect of people kind of really liking this particular layer 1, and they just want to see cool projects built on top of it. So every kind of project that gets deployed, they'll try and have a look at it, see if it's for them, if it's a game, give it a play, see if they enjoy it. So it's a community, it's a group of people that are actively looking for your project. So if you can get it in front of them, that you'll often see quite a lot of kind of people taking it up, as long as it's good. Obviously, that's the first point, but it gives you a lot more eyes than just launching on the Google Play Store would.
Yeah, I think you're right, George. The community that's heavily backing Avalanche or Solana or Polygon, they obviously, they tend to own those tokens, so they have a vested interest to try and support the ecosystem as much as they can, because that'll hopefully translate into, a value appreciation for their own tokens as well. So it's great because you have people that are technically have a vested interest in your business without having to bring them on board yourself necessarily. I think the other place that's obviously a logical place to go to are gaming guilds. It's very different, as George kind of alluded to, putting something on the Play Store or the Apple Store, or just the conventional buying market share model. You spend a substantial amount of money to acquire users, whereas in Web3, even though the user base isn't nearly as big as the conventional gaming user base yet, it's possible to get a couple of 100,000 players in a couple of weeks, not necessarily with any huge spend, just because of the type of relationships that you can build with the blockchain communities or within the gaming guild communities as well. So it's a wonderful playground from that point of view.
And shall we touch on NFTs a little bit? So currently NFTs have a bad reputation in some parts of the gaming world. Do you know why is that?
I think there's a few aspects to it. I think obviously, and it's fair enough. I'm a gamer myself, and I see a lot of the stuff that is published in sort of gaming magazines and just mainstream media about often like maybe not so much anymore, but previously like the environmental aspects of NFTs, saying like minting this one NFT on Ethereum burns down a house somewhere effectively, which is quite fun to see that written in the media, especially when there's kind of a lot of research around it that shows that that's kind of quite misconstrued is probably the best word to use. And I think it is a concern, but because of that, those kind of few miswritten articles, there's this huge kind of now community which is like really, really anti-NFT for the environmental aspect. So I think it was Ubisoft did a kind of NFT drop or something with Tezos. And Tezos itself is like a blockchain, which is like their whole marketing point is it's like carbon negative, pure green, like minting an NFT has no effect on the environment, if not a positive one. And so they did this. This is the main marketing point of this NFT thing because they'd obviously foreseen these concerns from the gaming community. Below that Twitter announcement, I'd say at least 50% of their comments were like, NFTs kill the planet, NFTs this, NFTs this, all about the environmental aspect. So even when you try and make your whole campaign around being green and environmentally friendly, people just don't really see it. And I think there's this kind of ingrained thing in a lot of people's minds. But I think there's ways to handle it, especially in terms of kind of the marketing. I can't remember which esports team it was, but they did like their NFT drop on Polygon, and they said this minting of these 5,000 NFTs has the same environmental effect as sending 2 emails. And I think comparisons like that really show like how kind of solvable this problem is, especially with using alternative like layer 2 chains as well. So I think that's one aspect. I think there are other aspects as well, such as a lot of the focus been on just kind of pictures of monkeys selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and people are just like, oh, I don't understand this. It's not for me, which is fair enough. Like, I don't understand that either. But then they kind of miss the kind of cool things that NFTs can do, such as with gaming and ownership of assets and interoperability as well, which is something we're really trying to push. But I honestly think it's like a branding issue. Like now crypto has become Web3 and people love it. So NFTs just need a new name, and I think people will come around to it, especially in gaming.
Yeah, it's obviously all very new, right?
I agree. I think the only thing that I'd add to that is probably not so much now, because it seems to have kind of obviously died down a little bit, the market. But a couple of months ago, particularly when Ubisoft did the Quartz drop and so forth, I think a lot of people saw conventional or the bigger publishers or AAA studios, if they were doing NFT drops, they saw it as a cash grab. So the community just felt, well, you know, I spend a lot in this game already, and now all of a sudden you're releasing NFTs and you expect me to buy them, which I mean, they're obviously not looking necessarily at the value that they're going to get from that NFT, and obviously they're not necessarily being forced to do it. But the cash grab perception was an issue, I think, as well as, you know, as you've rightly said, the environmental impact. I think thankfully there's more and more education around that now. But I mean, 6 months ago, yeah, if you mentioned the word NFT to anybody that knew what NFTs were without having the education behind it, and they had any inkling to being, you know, carbon neutral, oh goodness, you got a fair bit of backlash, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, the most important is that, you know, NFT used to be like artwork, right? But more and more, those NFT will bring utility, right? And especially across, you know, upcoming games, right? Could be across made for gamers or Footium projects. We will see, you know, technically when we've bought those NFT, how does it work and what can I do with this NFT, right? Because at the moment, people are paying for that. They're like, of course, there's, you know, really nice projects at the moment, but we're going to have more and more, and people are going to, you know, benefit from, you know, those NFT, and we'll use it through a real experience. So, and it's just the beginning, let's be honest, right? It's going to be completely different in 3 months. It's going to be even more interesting through this specific NFT topic.
Definitely, and I think just to add a kind of final point on that. So one aspect that Footium often gets compared to is something like FIFA Ultimate Team, where I know a lot of my friends back home, they'll spend like hundreds of pounds a year on like packs in Ultimate Team to get more money, to get more players, and then they have these kind of in-game tokens that they use to like buy and sell players and everything like that. And it's great and it's a fun game, but at the end of the year, that team pretty much becomes worthless because everyone buys the new FIFA, goes on to the new Ultimate Team, and then starts that cycle again. Whereas with kind of now you can have assets which kind of progress across this kind of 1 year schedule release. So even in the next game, maybe there's some kind of new cards or new features, but you can still utilize the kind of assets that you've invested your time and sometimes money into as well. So I think that's a huge improvement on the user side, because previously it literally was you just spend hundreds of pounds on a game to try and kind of be on the same level of everyone else. EA makes, I think it's 3 billion last year off of just FIFA Ultimate Team alone. And then at the end of the year, people are just going to go and do that the exact same thing again. And that kind of, they've had fun, but those assets are now almost worthless.
What are other perils and pitfalls that developers run when thinking about Web3? Something we would like to mention?
I think it's quite a broad question, because we could talk about this one question for a very long time. One of the things that we experienced was even though we had Web3 experience in-house, if you launch a new business or a new Web3 game during a hype cycle, a lot of the talent is either already taken or doing their own thing. So it's actually one of the reasons why we've gone the route to create a low-code SDK for game developers that want to embed Web3 solutions into their games, because we kind of realized if it's a problem for us, it's probably a problem for a lot of people. And so we started having those type of discussions. So I think right now, if you don't have Web3 experience in your team, it's a problem purely because you know, there's lots of groups that you can work with from a third-party point of view, but they're all busy. And the talent is busy, and the talent is busy trading NFTs as well. So, you know, everybody's really heavily invested from a time point of view already into the market. So, but I think there's more and more solutions on that front. And at the same time, thankfully, there's more and more education on the technical front when it comes to actually, you know, people upskilling into Web3 from a development point of view, from a solution architect point of view. So I heard the other day that there's only about 15,000 blockchain developers in the world that can call themselves blockchain developers. A company like Tencent has 20,000 engineers, and that's just one business. You know, so it's still, even from that point of view, we're very early on from a skills adoption point of view. So I think right now that for us, that was the biggest pitfall, just because it meant that things took longer.
Yeah, definitely. I think that can be a huge problem, is the kind of just lack of Solidity developers and other blockchain developers. I also think that you don't have to kind of shoehorn Web3 into every aspect. And I think one of the best ways is to just do some research by playing the existing games. So put a bit of money into a MetaMask, go out, try 5 different games, look at the user onboarding experience. How did you find it hard? What would you do differently, etc.? And it's quite fun. You're signing up for and playing games. And you're kind of getting an idea of what the existing market looks like. And you might see that there's like a gap in the market, or some of these games have terrible user experiences, and that's what you can exploit. But it's a lot more fun research than usually market research is.
We have to wrap up our nice chat soon. So I don't think we have any questions from the audience, but I would like to ask every one of you. So what are the key learnings you can and advice you can share to someone who is about to start developing a Web3 game?
I would just say engage, try and build a community from the very start. Find people that are interested in your games. For us, a lot of it came from existing sort of football Web3 games like Hosseraye, and also the Football Manager audience. And that's been really helpful in terms of giving feedback, giving input. helping with features. So we had actually, like, as we have now, the initial clubs have been sold. There's 3,000 and loads of people own those. And so when we were deciding, should we have 30-minute matches or 90-minute matches, we just put it to a vote. So you can use tools like Snapshot, which allow kind of each NFT to have one vote. And then people voted in favor of having 30-minute matches. And so that's the decision we made. So if you're ever looking for user feedback, there's very kind of direct ways you can do that with Web3 as well. So just focusing on getting some kind of community and some early testers and adopters is really helpful.
Yeah, I agree. The community side is for me the most important, because it's not a one shot, right? It's, a long-term approach where you need to, release your first collection of NFT, and then you will create your game, and then from there, the user will have the ability to, include this specific asset into the game. So there's a utility, and then they can, propose you to drive other ideas, to create any other topic into the game, any other gameplay, or they can try to propose a V2. So the engagement is long term. So I would recommend to strongly work on your community side. You can start from there with a simple Discord, and then try to bring utility, try to also bring external utility, even real life utility, something that you can link with a specific brand, something that you can use outside of the game. Everything is quite important, and this is the core value of the community proposal in Web3.
Thanks, Paul. Very good insight. We've got a few questions now. One of the questions is, do you agree that games can make use of Oracle data stored on another chain?
This one is very technical.
Yeah, I think it's possible. Might be a bit janky though. Usually most chains now have their own oracles, but if there's some specific data you need, then feasible, but a bit awkward.
I'm wondering if that question, does that relate maybe to NFTs? So for example, if you've got an NFT on a particular chain and you want to then bring that into a game that's maybe built on a different chain. So if that is what the question is about, I think the short answer is yes, it is possible. And there are a few people that are purely focusing on building solutions just for that. It's above my pay grade from a technical point of view to really give a proper answer on it. But from a cross portability of digital assets from one chain to another in the gaming sense, people are working on solving that. Yes.
Yeah, just to add, there's a company called Biconomy who are working on network agnostic transactions. I don't think it's going to be ready till like Q3, but they, that's exactly what they're trying to do. You could have an asset on Ethereum and your game is on Polygon. You can sign messages with the ownership of the Ethereum asset to have actions on the Polygon game.
I hope Arvis Games, who asked the question, are satisfied with our answers. The next question, in light of considerable recent backlash on Web3 against the likes of Ubisoft, Atari, Team 17, how can the games industry collectively win over gamers with Web3 dynamics?
I think it's a good question. I don't know how much these large groups necessarily engage with their communities. So I think once again, if you're actively talking to your player base and your customer base, and you're kind of taking them along the journey of why you want to do this and why you want to introduce this, that already helps. But that being said, I don't see why you can't go a similar route to what we're trying to do, where you create games that have the ability to have basically tokens on or off. So you can make a game playable by players that don't want to see the Web3 elements, but if they do, they can toggle that on, for example. I think the other thing that I know some of the larger brands are starting to do is they're obviously investing or collaborating with Web3 game studios. And in that way, they're kind of doing a bit of a rounded approach rather than going directly to their own customer base. But I think it's one of those cases where once the market matures, so whether it's studios like ourselves, etc., or game developers or Web3 games that are being built, the more quality games that are being built, the easier it's going to be for the conventional gaming brands to get in. Right now we're in the same thing that happened during the ICO boom. Every Dick, Tom, and Harry was doing an ICO, and 99% of them were just pointless. They shouldn't have been done. A lot of the play-to-earn games, unfortunately, have been done for the wrong reasons, or not necessarily really with the community in mind. So I think the more quality games we see coming out, that are Web3 games, the easier it's going to be for the conventional players to follow, and they're ultimately going to benefit massively from the work that we're all having to put in.
Thanks, Paul-David. Anyone else wants to add in anything before I'll wrap up the session completely?
I was just going to say, I remembered the esports team that did the NFT drop, which didn't have so much backlash, was 100 Thieves, and I think the messaging around that was pretty cool. So if you have a look at the 100 Thieves NFT, there was still some backlash, but I think they kind of preempted all the backlash in the announcement, which is quite a good way to do it, kind of showing how it wasn't killing the environment, etc.
Thanks, George. Well, our panel is coming to an end. Thanks, everyone, for the interesting insights. Thanks for the questions. Find us on LinkedIn if you have any more questions. We are happy to answer. And have a great day.